So I'm not sure if you are aware who we are, who am I. So the ZEIT, so this, for a strange reason, we also have 70th birthday these days, next year, actually. And the website I'm running, we have also 20th birthday next year, for some really strange reason, I don't know why. So I think every newspaper in Germany is getting 70 these days. But the ZEIT is different. It's a weekly paper, and so when I'm a subscriber since I was 16 or something, and I got into digital. I went to journalism school with the beautiful woman you saw before. I sat next to her. I never used a typewriter, by the way. So since the age of 12, I used computers to write my stories, as far as I remember. I'm sorry. When I didn't work there, I thought they are doomed. They will die. And I told them. I remember the day I told them. 10 years before I started work for the ZEIT, I told them, you will die because there's this internet now. And if you are a paper, you have a real problem. But if you are a weekly paper, you will basically die. And this didn't happen. For some strange reason I want to talk about, the ZEIT is growing year after year in subscribers and in revenue. And so the Economist or the New York Times start to write about us. Why? What do these Germans do there? Why are they growing in print with a weekly paper? And so there's a strange thing going on I want to talk later about. And also our website, which has now something like 9 million uniques per month, something like that, is growing quite rapidly. We are profitable, having something like 70 to 60, 70, 80 editors. The print edition has something like 150 editors. And we are the ones who never complain on panels, on media panels about the future and stuff. Like we are doing fine. So, and I try to, well, tell you a little bit about the why I think we are doing fine, basically. So first of all, I want to talk about change. So I'm a huge fan of William Gibson. Do you know William Gibson? No? Thank you. So there's one person aware of the guy who predicted the internet. And I think half of the book, so Neuromancer, William Gibson, cyberspace. No? Okay. One of the most important B books you should absolutely read, because he predicted everything we are seeing now. And half of the book came true already, and I think the other half will come true. For example, there's a self-driving car in the book. It was written something in the 80s or end of 70s, 80s? Thanks. And second reader. And it's called Ahmed. Do you remember Ahmed in the second part of Neuromancer? So, and he predicted self-driving cars and stuff like that. And he thought this is really fancy stuff, and now it's there. And so we have the cyberspace, and you can move around and in data and see big data clouds and stuff like that. And it's there. And some people say there are some studies saying that it's something like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because he wrote it like that, and all the physicists and computer scientists read Neuromancer. It came true, basically, and I think that's true. So the question is, can we predict the future? And William Gibson said, the future is not Googleable. So you can't Google what will happen. So the question is, can we predict the future? And there's one person in Germany who wrote down the most theses about the future of media. There was a big kind of survey trying to find out who is the person in Germany telling you the most theses about the future of media, and it's me. I'm sorry to say. And when I read that, I immediately stopped talking about the future of media. Because when I went through my kind of predictions, I had a feeling that every single prediction became wrong at one point in time. So thesis number 1 for today is all theses about the future of media are wrong. For example, maybe you don't remember the time before you used your first web browser. So I was a technology reporter in these days, and I always had to explain what the internet is all about. And there was a second thing called AOL these days. I don't know if you remember. And we wrote a lot of stories about who will win AOL or the internet, the free internet or the closed shop AOL where you have to pay fees, where there was a huge pile of content which was closed. And so everyone said, so I said, well, the internet will win. And but it wasn't, we weren't sure. And at some point in time, AOL had more users than the web had. And we just didn't know. And if you look back, you realize that it's not a law that we have a free internet. And today, there's something like a closed system winning the war again, which is Facebook. So Facebook is the opposite of the free internet. Facebook is something like AOL wanted to be. And so if you think deeper, it's you can't predict what will happen, and sometimes at some point in time, your prediction becomes true and it becomes wrong again if you move further on. Or if you look at Apple, there was a famous Wired story, I don't know if you remember, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, about Apple doing everything wrong. So if there's a handbook for IT companies, Apple did everything wrong. They weren't open source, they were secretive, whatever. So they didn't publish their code. They didn't talk about their product. They just pushed it out at some point in time. And I think something like 10 years later, there was a second cover story of Wired about Apple, apologizing for the first cover story. And so I think we are, in this sense, so we are not as profitable as Apple, but in this sense, we are like Apple. We are doing everything wrong. We are slow. So also our online edition is famous for being the slowest in pushing out news. For example, we think a lot before we write. We kind of sit there and, do you think that's true? Is it really true? Should we write about this? So, and turns out people like that. But I don't think that you should run 20 of these kind of mediums like ZEIT, but for us it's working really well. So we're not the fast. You are much faster than we are. Or take the FT, so the Financial Times. So I always preach that paid content won't work in the free internet, and what we see now is that more than half of their revenue comes out of kind of paid digital stuff. And I never expected that. I didn't think it would work. So thesis 2. So as I said before, some success strategies may only work once. Like, I don't think there could be 20 Apples. We shouldn't copy Apple. And I don't think yet that you should copy what we are doing, because maybe it just works once. There can be only one economist. There can be only one, you name it, Vorwerk, mixer, whatever. And thesis 3, now about prediction again. Muddling through, so durchwursteln in German. Muddling through is a very modern strategy. So Angela Merkel, for example, is criticized by the Americans, for example, for muddling through all the time. She has no vision. She just moves on step by step, looks this much forward. What a terrible politician. I'm a huge fan of Angela Merkel. I'm a physicist and I love what she does, because she understands complex systems and she knows that you can't predict the next 10 years of the EU. You are happy if you can predict the next 2 weeks of the EU. So muddling through is called agile development today. I don't know if you... and that's basically what we try to do. despite of the fact that we are 70 years old, and we were founded by a famous. So one of our really famous founding editors was called Gräfin Dönhoff. She's really famous in Germany, and we still say today, what would die Gräfin do? So what would she say? And we are trying to kind of have this in our hearts and move on week after week. So we changed many things because I think we can't predict anything. We are really in agile processes, not only in our IT development, software development, but also in the newsroom. So we have a Kanban board. It's not a Scrum board, but a Kanban board in the newsroom for our projects now. It's working really well. Turns out that journalism is all about agile all the time. And we became even more agile because, so we tried to kill, for example, we killed traditional conferences. So if you're working at a newspaper, you have these morning meetings and afternoon meetings, and after 2 or 3 p.m., the print editors start to work for some hours, and then there's this print deadline, and they kind of relax again. And so the net isn't working like that, so we tried to kind of kill all the conference stuff, and what we're doing instead is called topical islands. It's Themeninsel in German, or Tinsel as we call it. And it's actually, it's a really modern thing because we copied it from a US startup. What's the name of the founder of Twitter again? Thanks. Square is the credit card thing. Excuse me? Yeah, so Square, Jack's startup. They have a rule. If 3 people are in the room and have a meeting, you have to write a protocol and send it to the whole company, which is really strange because if you're talking to investors and write a protocol to all your employees, it may be complicated at some point in time, but they do that. And I was very impressed by that. And we try to do our conferences like that. So if you want to talk about a topic and you're the culture editor and you want to talk about Volkswagen problems, and so you send an email to the whole newsroom, hey, I want to talk about this, I have some ideas, let's talk about it. And people gather, and everyone's allowed to join the meeting. And at some point in time I stopped taking written notes. And the problem is so I'm a beta tester of iOS 9, and sometimes my notes crash, and so I have some additional notes in the bag if the iPhone crashes. So we did do basically the same. And after the meeting, if you had a lot of ideas, you are obliged to write a protocol about what was said to the whole newsroom again. And this is really working really well. It's much better than traditional conferences, and you could kind of move on really, really fast. If something's happening or you run out of ideas, you just send an email to the newsroom, and people love it. It's not about kind of heads of departments telling each other every morning at 9 o'clock what they are trying to do today, which is really boring. So what I think is that a medium at the end isn't a product, so thesis number 4, which may be wrong, but a process. So it's about kind of talking all day, thinking all day, optimizing all day, moving forward in kind of tiny bits of time and looking back and did it work? No, it didn't work, so we have to change something. So this is agile in the newsroom. So William Gibson, the famous writer said, thesis number 5, the future is already here, it's just not very evenly distributed. I love it. I love this because it's exactly what I think is happening. So you can see the future, but you don't know which. So for example, when I first saw AJ Plus, are you aware of something called AJ Plus, Al Jazeera Plus? So the American youth kind of program of Al Jazeera America, which only lives on Facebook. it's only mainly video with without sound. And when I first saw that, I thought, wait, maybe that's the future of media in 10 years. And so they don't have to have revenues because they are financed by Qatar, but it's really revolutionary what they do. When I first saw Upworthy, which is kind of declining now, but when I first saw Upworthy, I thought, maybe that's interesting what they do. Are you aware of Upworthy? So it's like BuzzFeed with a cause, like BuzzFeed trying to push good topics, founded by some campaigners in the US. And when I saw that, I thought that could be something. Let's look into that. But you're not sure which part of the future, which is already there, becomes a huge trend. You can't predict that. So you have to just look around, try things, and see what happens. This is number 6. This is a strange thing to say, but I think that journalism, despite of the fact that we are complaining, and so I'm not complaining, but many journalists are complaining, is in full blossom today. So we never had a phase in time where we had this high quality, complex stories due to the net. So we can take the appropriate medium for every story we think about. It's totally different than compared to 10 or 20 years ago. If you look into your archives, so when I was at journalism school, for example, I went as an intern to a magazine called Geo, which is something like National Geographic for Germany. And I had to do some research in the archives, and Geo is also really old, something like 70s or 80s. And you had these really long stories about the Kanzleramt in Germany going on for 50 pages, and it was really boring to read that stuff. Or if you look at old TV programs, when I worked at Westdeutscher Rundfunk, there's a famous program called Monitor. And I watched really some of the first Monitor programs. You just can't watch this. It's so terrible. It's so bad journalism. It's so I think everything's getting better actually. Journalism is in full blossom today. So what are we working on? Challenges. There are quite some challenges. So for example, all our users using these devices, and they do not use desktop clients as much as they used to. So what changed, for example, in every digital newsroom is that you don't have usage going up 8 in the morning, Monday morning, and there's a peak at 12 o'clock in noon, and then it's declining 5 p.m. and at 8 p.m. you can go home because nothing happens on the net. That's online journalism 10 years ago. Today, it's just not, there's no movement. It goes up something like 5 in the morning and it stops 11 p.m. at Süddeutsche, I think 1 in the morning at ZEIT. So we are really slow readers, long stories. You read them before you go to bed. So, but what happens if you go on the mobile devices? So we thought a lot about this. How can you tell stories and deep stories, slow stories on this device? And there's a second thing going on. So Facebook, Twitter, we realized that it's out there. And for some years, we just ignored it. And we realized at some point in time that Twitter loves us and Facebook loves us. We don't know why. So we didn't know why. We just don't know why. But we are quite successful there without showing cat pics and stuff like that. We're doing the opposite. We are slow and think a lot and so on. And it works. So what I think is that social media is all about kind of, you want to share things that are different. You don't want to share the same story again and again. So for example, the former Google world was totally different. It was a Me Too world. So if you publish the 100th story, which was totally like the 99 stories other news outlets published before, you were rewarded. It's called Google News. So you shoot at news clusters and you are rewarded if you do exactly the same story at exactly the same point in time. So Google is a Me Too machine for journalists, and Facebook is the opposite. Facebook is about rewarding individual stuff, and we are really, really edgy, so we're doing really well at Facebook. And there's a third thing we're thinking about, which is the good old innovator's dilemma you all may have in your part of your businesses. So we have a decent business model, I'm sorry to say. But so if we want to do something new, we have to kill parts of our business model all the time. If we don't kind of conquer ourselves, we may lose market shares in the future. So we are founding something like Upworthy. So we founded a thing called ZEIT, which is something like a younger version of ZEIT Online. And we thought a lot about it, and so I talked a lot about it before so with the founder of Upworthy, for example. So how should we do it? Do you think that still works in Germany and things like that? And we did a major relaunch recently and tried to invent some storytelling formats for these devices. I didn't bring something to show because I wasn't sure if this would work here. But if you look at ZEIT and you Google for something like a thing called live dossiers, and so we also call it story streams. It's something like a really, really slow live blog working extremely well on these devices. It's about, so if you go to holidays and come back and you want to know, so are there some really important things that happened in the refugee crisis? I don't want to read these 500 pieces now, which I find in Google News. I just want to know the talking points. So this is about, so we invented something like a really, really slow live blog, where you can kind of follow the NSA scandal over years, and you can read it on, let's say, 5 or 6 screens on your mobile phone. And there's the second thing we tried to, so we built a little new CMS content management system for a thing we call cards, so which also work really well on these devices. It's just like small cards, and a card could be just text, a picture, a video. A lot like AJ Plus tries to tell stories, and you just swipe through the cards. And if you think about it, the card metaphor is one of the strongest metaphors on the net now. So if you Google for weather Frankfurt, what you get is a card with a lot of complex information on one card, because people realize that, so the information designers realize that people feel comfortable with these little cards, and they accept much more complex informations on small screens if it's designed like a little card. Also, Facebook is about cards. All the Facebook postings look like cards. All the stuff that goes viral basically looks like a card, if you think about it. So we try to tell stories for mobile devices on cards. Thesis number 7. I think that if you look at the history of digital, that Apple, Google, and Facebook are mortal. So it's a strange thing to say, because you think that Google is there since the beginning of the universe, and Facebook, wow, they are 100 years old now. And they are not. And you know, Apple will be there forever, and Nokia, they will never die, and AOL, they are still there, up and running somewhere in the little kind of, I don't know. So what I wanted to say is that we are there for 70 years. We are a small business. We are not as profitable as Google or something, but somehow we manage to muddle through all the time. And I'm positive that we will do another 70 years maybe. And you're not allowed to say that as a German journalist. I apologize. Actually, this is number 8, my last one. No, there's number 9 too. So there's never been a business model for news, to be honest. So we never, so if you look at it for news, I don't mean, you know, the early Reuters days and stuff like that, but if you look at popular news journalism, there's never been, so people never bought just the papers and this would finance the papers. It has always been like second layer business models, like you use the reach to sell ads and stuff like that. And so I'm really positive because there has never been something supporting my job in a direct way. It's always about having ideas how we kind of get some money. And so, for example, ZEIT Online is not only about selling ads. We have also job market, which is doing really well because for some reason the ZEIT is the place. If you're a German professor, your job ad has to be in the ZEIT and at ZEIT.de. It's a law, you know. And there are some other business models working really well, and the mix is kind of supporting us, but there's not the business model for journalism, I think. So last thesis, journalism could just disappear. I just have been really positive about what happened to us in the last 70 years, but I'm not sure if this, I hope it will go on for the next 70 years. Especially in Germany, I think a lot of people think that so there's the Grundgesetz, and somewhere there's written that Süddeutsche has to be there forever. I swear, and they don't realize that, for example, the FAZ, or also you had some bad news today, it's not, you know, like Newton's laws that a free press is still there in 20 years because it has to be, because it's important for democracy. It's not like in the US where you see that news is just, or journalism is just a business. It's like, we always have the feeling it has to be like that, and so journalism has to be there. I know that that's not true, but as long as we do not stop muddling through, I think we will be fine. Thank you for listening.